or no?
Yes.
Yes, great, thanks. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this webinar as part of the Just Fashion series. This is about our 8th or 9th or even 10th session in the project. This Just Fashion is a European funded project and covering circularity in the fashion clothing sector. And my name's Martin Charter from the Centre for Sustainable Design, and we're coordinating the project, within the project, the work on monitoring regulation and standards. I also wear another hat as head of Circular Economy Committee or chair of the Circular Economy Committee for British Standards, so I'm very engaged with the standards issue. So Just Fashion is a significant project within Horizon Europe with partners throughout Europe, multiple activities happening, pilots going on around different topics, work on circular business models, work on climate change adaptation plans, and developing tools. And as I said previously, our role is to focus on the policy development, including standardization. One caveat is that we are not lawyers. We have a lot of experience in policy, European environmental policy, going back to the mid-90s in different sectors. But any action you take as a result of this webinar is at your own responsibility. So again, what we're going to do is overview textiles and clothing specific standards that are emerging in an international and an ISO level and European level, and also some of the broader circularity standards that are developing, not specifically for the sector, but that might have relevance to the sector as we go forward. And we're primarily focusing on the European dimension rather than the national dimension in that sense. So we're lucky enough to have Danielle from NEN to give us an overview of firstly some activity with an ISO in the sector, and then specifically the work she's coordinating within CEN. So I'll pass across to Danielle.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for the invitation, of course. My name is indeed Danielle van Veen. I work at NEN in the Netherlands as a standardization consultant, and in particular, I'm the secretary of the CEN, so the European Working Group on Circular Textiles. But first, I'll start with some information on ISO. Perhaps ISO standards are quite familiar for you, and ISO is more a worldwide standard. And I think the ISO group, the ISO Technical Committee for Textiles, is ISO TC 38. I mentioned the scope here. Probably the slides will be shared, but it's a very broad technical committee which concerns everything regarding standards on fibers, yarns, till rope, and it does go from microplastics to animal fibers. So it's very broad, and it also covers ethical and environmental issues. Next slide, please. I highlighted some standards, ISO standards that are relevant for circular textiles. For example, with tests for color fastness of textiles, on the industrial washing and finishing procedures, and quite a lot of standards on quality standards that are being used for example, also for extending longevity of textile products. So, for example, on pilling, on abrasion resistance, tear resistance, and bursting strength. So just some examples I noted down here. Next slide, please. Then there are two specific working groups that I think would be of interest regarding circular textiles. One is, they're both under the technical committee textiles. One is working group 30 that covered tests for biodegradability. And another one that's very interesting is working group 35, sorry, on environmental aspects. I think quite a familiar standard in the field is already ISO 5157. And this standard covers environmental aspects vocabulary. So a lot of terms and definitions to ensure that when we use specific terms that we're talking about the same things. And now there are currently two quite new standards under drafting with evaluation methodologies and requirements for labeling of both recycled man-made fibers and bio-based man-made fibers. So this might be interesting as well as a little bit of a background. If you go to the next slides, I'll just focus more on the European side. So on ISO level, we had ISO TC 38, and on a European level, we have CEN TC 248 on textiles and textile products. And this is the technical committee within CEN that's responsible for developing European standards related to all textiles and textile products. And there's, again, a lot of work that's being carried out under this technical committee, but I would like to focus a little bit more on working group 39, on circular economy for textile products and the textile chain. Within this working group, we are developing standards for the textile industry on several circular aspects. So I'll take you with me. So this working group 39, it's a European working group. It started in 2021. As I already mentioned, I'm the secretary of this working group, and the background of that is that a couple of years ago already we published a Dutch standard on circular textiles, requirements and categories. And we started that in the Netherlands, but we thought it was important to, when you look at circular textiles, that you work together internationally. So we brought this to the European standardization platform CEN, and then this working group was started. Our convener is Mr. Edwin Maas. He's from Belgium. He's our technical expert, and I'm, so to say, guiding the process. But that's where it started. But it got a little bit out of hand, you could say. We move to the next slide. It's quite big working group. We're working together with 19 countries that are participating currently in this working group, and over 150 experts. And you can see all the green countries that are currently participating. So, well, we mentioned before European, but of course the UK is working into CEN as well. And next to these countries, we also have a variety of liaison organizations that are also participating, such as Recycling Europe, which was formerly Eurovic, good to say, Eurotex, ECOS, ANAC. So yeah, a lot of engagement. We go to the next slides. So if we look at published documents, I mentioned before ISO 5157. This was developed under an ISO level, but at that point, CEN and ISO already both adapted this standard. So it was this is sort of the counterpart between ISO and CEN. So this is already one published standard, and I thought it would be good to mention two related projects as well. The first one is from another working group, but there is a technical specification already on self-declared environmental claims and how terms should be used. And perhaps you already know that there are some EN standards on the technical part of the digital product passport. And not so long ago, a CEN workshop agreement was published that looks at sector-specific parts, the side of this, sorry. So guidelines on data collection from textiles. So I think it's good to know. But for the next slide, I'm moving on to the project we're working on now. So I already said it got a little bit out of hand. We brought one document to the European Working Group, and now we're working on 7 new technical specifications. This is a sort of, this is another form of an EN standard, and it can be developed faster. We chose this route because, of course, the circular textiles environment is developing very fast. So we thought it would be good to develop the standards first as a technical specification so that they can be published. We can, in the meantime, see what happens with EU regulation, and we can gather input from the markets as they use the technical specifications in practice, and then start developing into EN standards. We can divide the 7 documents we're developing into 2 parts, or in 2 parts. This is the general part. We started with, I will go into depth more in the, but this is more of the general part with general principles and guidance, design for circularity, categorization of and requirements on non-virgin input materials, and a relatively new work item on collecting, handling, sorting, and storing specifications for used textile products and textile waste. I'll go into depth a little bit more in a second. But first, the other 3 documents, and those contain minimum physical durability requirements for 3 different product groups: for clothing, workwear, and bed, bath, kitchen, and table textiles. And the idea is to increase longevity of these products, as we thought this is one of the aspects for more circular textile economy. So if we go to the next slides. So the first document will be published shortly. Actually, I do expect it at this point to be published in July, hopefully. And it's general principles and guidance, and it's the basis really, a little bit more vocabulary, some principles of the circular business network. So it really forms the basis of the 7 documents. So if we go to the next slides. Then we're also working on a part design for circularity. And it's really about what can you do on the design part to increase circularity. Therefore, we looked, of course, at the, I think, familiar R strategies. So what design principles can you use to design products with these R strategies in mind? So for each, we created design principles, and then we elaborate a little bit more on what's the principle, what key aspects are there, how can you implement it into the design process, and there are some KPIs as well. And it's really a practical guidance of how you can do this and incorporate this into the design process. The next slide, indeed. And then the first document is of categorization of and requirements on non-virgin input materials. Input materials are categorized by its source and used in this document. So we're defining end of waste criteria, of course, all in line with legislation, how to verify this and how to communicate this. and at the same time dealing with risks, and chain of custody models are incorporated as well. And there are formulas in it as well for measuring circularity. And then the fourth and last part of the general a little bit more on this standards. I added one more table because this was really the basis of the document. So we looked at the R strategies, and if we look at input material flows and closed loop, open loop, pre-consumer, post-consumer, etc., we created a table what is applicable to what our strategy, to have a little bit of an overview on which the document is based. Next slide. So in the fourth and last document of the general part of the series is on collecting, handling, sorting, and storing specifications for used textile products and textile waste. This was actually based on a EURIC position paper that was turned into a Spanish standard and was brought to our European working group as well. And well, I mentioned the scope here. It's quite at the beginning phase. So of course, we have a basis, and we're now looking at, okay, what do we want to add? What do we want to incorporate or elaborate on? But it's on guidelines for collecting, handling, sorting, and storing of used textile products and textile waste. And the purpose is to ensure the highest quality possible of output after processing. Maybe you can already imagine that a lot of stakeholders are involved there, from textile producers until legislators, general public, and recycling companies. Okay. And then the series on minimum requirements. In these documents, minimum physical durability levels for different categories are being established for 3 product groups, so 3 documents, one for clothing, one for workwear, and one for bed, bath, kitchen, and table textiles. And for each document, we have different categories. For example, towels or bed linen for the third documents, or trousers for clothing or workwear. Of course, at first we define what articles belong to these categories. And then we looked at, okay, what are the main problems that occur, why these articles would be disposed of. And based on that, we said, okay, then it would be good to do these and these tests and set minimum requirements on that to increase longevity. And we set a couple of requirements for each categories. So we said these are important parameters that shall be implemented. And apart from that, we also provide additional recommendations. And they are perhaps less important parameters, but we do advise that it would be good to achieve this as a minimum level to improve longevity. Yeah. That's
Okay.
just it.
Okay, sorry, I just still can't see anybody on my thing. So thank you very much for that, Danielle. We'll I'm sure there will be questions and thoughts that we can pick up in the questions at the end. So we'll be back to you soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, I'm sort of now just going to give a bit of an overview about some sort of generic developments that are perhaps going to become more relevant for the sector, and some sort of broader standards again that may well be useful, you know, as particularly the European regulations move forward. So Digital product passports is for many of us a hot potato, and is going to continue to be a hot potato. I don't know how if that translates into other languages, but again, it's going to be a important and slightly confusing topic for many. But it's going to impact on the textiles and clothing sector. So essentially, coming out of the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products regulation, which is a significant shift in the European Commission's product regulations, the textile sector is one of the sectors that has been prioritized. One of the 6 elements of ESPR in terms of the framework regulations is digital product passports. And essentially, this is a sort of digital collection and communication of product circularity data on individual products. And indeed, as highlighted, textiles and clothing, as an end product is highlighted in there. But what we have is other sectors that are being targeted in the area, batteries and particularly iron and steel in the short term. But there are other sectors that will come on board. But a lot of the basis of DPP will be focuses in effect around international trade. So exporters, supply chains, supplying information throughout the area. So of course, there's a big need to actually coordinate internationally. So key thing that I always bring up is there's a big confusion out there in the marketplace around the different 2 crude elements of DPP. It's the how part of DPP. So this is much more to do with the IT element of this, the data element of this. And as you'll hear in a few minutes, this is now moved forward within SEN regulations. So this is the sort of the digital bucket, if you like, and the standards related to how you process, collect, etc. data. So that is now, there is more guidance information available through SEN. The second part of it is the what part of this. This is the content of DPP. Can we all remain muted, please? Sorry, I'm picking up a bit of background noise from somebody. I don't know, Sasha or Lillian, if you can identify where this is coming from and close the microphone. Please, can we remain muted? Thank you. So important other part of DPP is the what part. And so this is what will go into the DPP in terms of particularly the product circularity and other environmental requirements. Now, the key point there is we will not really know specifically about that until the DPP product regulation is published in Q1, Q2 2027. So that will give us much more clarity on what precisely the eco-design requirements that the Commission is going to focus on in the product regulations. What will then follow from that is a specific DPP textiles regulation as well. So as I mentioned here, it's not specifically highlighted in here. There are 2 elements to this: the product regulation around eco-design requirements, and then the specific regulation around DPP that will follow it. So at the moment, it's from Q1, Q2 2027, with the product regulation being passed first. So as highlighted, there are a number of standards that are in development and technical committees that have been set up to take this forward throughout the world. The leading group within this is from Europe, and this is the SEN-Elect Joint Technical Committee 2024, and we've now got 6 technical standards that are published within the sort of Y part of this. Come back to that in a minute, and 2 to come, but maybe others coming forward. We also have ISO TC 154, which is another more, international trade-related standard. Importantly, now we also have an ISO IEC Joint Technical Committee that has been established, that was passed and is now starting to operate. There is an IEE group that has been set up, and importantly, China is starting to work on its own DPP, and particularly starting specifically with textiles. So the CENELEC group received a standardization request from the Commission in May 2023. It then started the activities in April 2024, and actually, having been, as a sort of an expert or taking standards to publication, they've done remarkable work in that short period to take 6 highly complex standards to publication. So there's been over 400 experts involved in this on the technical side. So different working groups are set up that have managed the development of different standards to develop these harmonized standards. And again, the point there is that at this stage, these technical standards are harmonized and are not specifically product related. So they have a schedule, and pretty much they've made that schedule. I think these are the standards that have now been published. So much more, as I was saying, the why part of this, the data part of this, from data carriers to systems operability, data storage, archiving. And now there is also in italics at the bottom, there is 2 other standards that are due to be published, I heard, in September. So these are now available, and I believe as their EN numbers will be published at a sort of national standards level. So wherever you are, your national standards body should be publishing them, as I understand it, in your own national standards body. This is a little bit more detail around the role of JTC 24 in DPP. That's been highlighted in a technical report produced by the JRC, who are doing many reports, technical reports that are feeding into the development of ESPR and also DPP. So I don't plan to go into detail there, but there is more detail behind the scenes there. We also have within ISO TC 154, which is a very well established technical committee within ISO covering processes, data, and commerce. That have really started to look at the whole area of DPP, and through Joint Working Group 9, they've set up or are starting work, as I understand it, on a preliminary work item around digital product passport overview and fundamental principles. So this is co-led by China and Germany, and this is sort of one level of activity happening within the more sort of commercial supply chain route. So within that, they also are coordinating between ISO and UNECE, which I think is the employers, United Nations Employers Organization. So this is one area to sort of keep an eye on. There will be standards published in different domains, and the challenge will be how we coordinate all of this. Importantly, on that basis, ISO and IEC have also set up a joint technical committee that was authorized after voting in November last year, and a technical committee has now been set up under Joint Technical Committee 5, and under chairmanship and sole secretariat from DIN in Germany. Again, 4 work streams focused on similar areas, or if not the same areas as within the SEN activities. There is also other activity within IEE, perhaps again, working within the electronic sector. Again, I don't know the emphasis of this, but again, as we understand, this was as a basis of a proposal from China. We're seeing, both Germany and China very interested in DPP, and this is one that we're looking for more information on. So China DPP, well, again, China have now set up a strategy in relation to DPP. They produced a development report on this and a framework and a roadmap. And their Chinese Academy of Information and Communications Technology is leading this. Again, it seems that textiles is one of the first sectors they're focusing on. And again, they held their first standardization group meeting in March this year. Again, we don't know the precise focus of this. Again, it's quite difficult sometimes to know precisely what are on the agendas for some of the Chinese standards. But again, the important point here is with China being a major part of the supply chain for textiles and clothing, both in terms of finished products and also materials and components. They are looking at this both, I imagine, from a supply chain point of view, an export point of view. I'm thinking we're seeing Shine and other Chinese companies just starting to set up more and more stores in Europe. But also there may well be some issues going on in relation to accessing the Chinese market as well. We saw this in the electronic sector where there was something called the ROS law, which restriction of hazardous substances that Europe led on. And we saw, for example, China ROS being set up where China only allowed people to use Chinese authorized laboratories, when entering the Chinese market around, lead-free soldering, things like that. But again, that's not the stuff of this sector. But again, it's following some sort of broad developments we've seen before. So again, I'm going to speed through these other broader aspects, quite quickly. We will, as we started a little bit late, we will run until about 3:10 for anybody who wants to drop off early. So basically, back in 2018, there was an agreement to set up an ISO technical committee led by France around circular economy, providing guidance on bringing circularity into sort of organizational responses. That technical committee is now sort of circa 8 years old. There are different sort of structures to this, and it's sort of adapting as standards are developed, as they go into revision, as specific tasks emerge, but there's a sort of whole structure behind this. We have now a number of standards already published. You can see here we are recording this, so again, you will be able to listen to this again. So again, it is the whole area is very technical and detailed, so it may be worth having a look at it after. So there is, a series of standards were published in 2025. Particularly of note were the first 3 standards around principles and vision, business models and circularity. But pretty much after those standards were published, there was a whole process to actually set up a revision of those standards, because There was, it is a fast-moving area. It's a complicated area. There are different, different sort of sets of issues around it. And again, coming out of feedback from a survey that ISO completed, there was a feeling that the standards need to be in the revision need to be made even more applied to industry. So again, there are standards, and these are guidance standards. However, there is one that seems to be potentially for certification that I'll come into a minute. So we do now have those first three standards moving into revision, with revisions to be completed in 2028. So quite a long way off. So again, there's new activity going on within TC323. There is work around extended producer responsibility starting to emerge potentially under the Vienna Agreement, working with SEN. I'll come on to that in a minute. And there are other standards in development as well now actually set up. So particularly of note is the Circular Economy Management System standard that is now led by Norway. And again, this is an area where there's been quite a lot of conversation. For example, do we need a management system for circularity, or should it be part of, existing management system standards like quality standards or ISO standards? But the voting and the agreement was to go forward on a specific standard. So the issue, as I understand it, but it's still a little bit unclear, is that there is the potential for this standard to be for certification, similar to ISO 14001 or ISO 9000, but that is still a little bit murky and needs to be perhaps fully understood. So if you're interested in that, I'd suggest you pick this up with your national standards body to, ask the question or through maybe an expert or get involved in that process. So again, different working groups there and different working groups being set up. And this is actually from our colleague at BSI, that sort of shows the different stages of the standards development. But so essentially there's a lot of activity going on. But again, this is horizontal, not specific for textiles, but potentially if a company is looking at its whole processes around circularity, its approach to how it's going to develop, take forward circularity as an organization, if it's in the textiles and clothing sector for the regulations. There's a lot of guidance now out there, and which is evolving. Separately, SEN set up TC473. I'm losing track of this, but maybe it's about 2 to 3 years ago now. And essentially, this is developing standards for Europe, but also mirroring the ISO activities. And there are 4 working groups in place, and within working group 1 and working group 4, there was a feeling that perhaps the terminology and circular business model standard didn't quite align to European context. So there is a process going on to actually provide supplementary information around how those standards align to policy development in Europe. So, but there is also other activity going on, deliberately chosen around called around information sharing and value networks. Big discussion around whether that should be called digital product passport. The agreement was at that stage maybe 18 months ago. DPP was not clear. So there's standards work starting around information sharing or is progressing. And again, that's leading to dialogue around setting up activities within ISO and IEC. There is also separate work going on remanufacturing. And again, Other activity within TC473 around extended producer responsibility, led by Sweden. That again is then leading to the discussions over the establishment of a collaboration with ISO about taking this to the international level. So again, a whole series of activities. So it is again a very complicated, activity going on. One that I'll go through very briefly is JTC10. And originally this was set up under a mandate in around 2015 from the Commission to Senelect to really develop a series of, it's called materials efficiency, but I almost think of it as product circularity standards related to the energy related product sector. Now, why is this relevant to this area? Firstly, there's a whole series of standards that have been published in different specific areas around durability, remanufacturability, repairability. But those have initially slanted much more to energy related products. But under the revision of, or under the ESPR, Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, this particular committee has been mandated with taking a broader approach. So aligning its activities with, a broader set of sectors, i.e., not just focusing on energy-related products or electronics. And so we understand that some companies in the textile sector have already taken some of these standards and have looked at them and extracted elements from that. But again, they're not written primarily from the textiles and clothing sector. The first standard that in fact has been written with a slightly broader scope was a circular design standard. And this particular standard, interestingly, is written more from the point of view of how you do design and development rather than how you manage it within, for example, environmental management systems. So it's very much a designer focused standard. And the key new development on this is there has been a proposal to take this up to a group called ISO TC 207, which is the broader environmental management system standard. And so there will be standards work starting around circular design at an international level. So again, this is showing the importance of the design part of this, within the international community, not just Europe. 80% of a product's environmental impact is at the design stage. So unless you're thinking about these issues there, you're embedding problems. So this is increasingly being recognized. So the other sort of part of the challenges of this is we already have broader so-called eco-design standards that are focused on how you integrate environmental considerations into design and development, both at a sort of design and development level, but also a management level. But eco-design is a sort of broader concept than circular design. So I think one of the challenges will be, how we ensure that we're not, that the standards are moving together in coherence. So just very briefly before I pass over to my colleague, Sarah, and Sarah, if you'd like to sort of comment on this before going into the playbook, that would be great. I'm sorry, I can't see you, so hopefully you'll show me a thumbs up or something. So the other just key thing we wanted to sort of bring up was that it's a sort of, it's at a national level, but there was international interest in this. Back in 2017, before the TC323 and the 59,000 series standards were developed, UK developed the first sort of practical guidance standard on how you integrate circularity into organizations. And this was published back in 2017 after a sort of a systematic process with a lot of testing with industry. So the standard is available, but what has been agreed is to also look at the revision of this standard, now in line with the ongoing need for guidance on how to deal with circularity in organizations, and perhaps some of the challenges with the revision of the 59,000 series not being completed until 2028. So this standard will align with any of the European or national developments. Again, in the sort of UK context, we have a circular growth plan that is about to be published. So the standard will be, aligned, and there will be, coordination with any policy that's emerging. Again, as highlighted, there will be alignment and dialogue with ISO and SEN over the different activities. And indeed, we've had the first meeting, earlier last month, and there is a timeline established for June 2027. Really, I won't go through the detail of this, but, essentially, we're looking to make this standard, highly practical, to be really usable by organizations that are really looking to bring circularity into their systems and structures, whether that be companies that already have well-established, environmental or quality systems and structures, or for companies who are newer to it or starting off. I don't know, Sarah, if you wanted to make any comments on it before going on to the playbook.
I don't think I can add anything else at the moment, but thank you, Martin. We've certainly begun the revision process. There's a scoping workshop with the panel who've obviously made up of experts and stakeholders in the area, that's taking place on the 2nd of July. So that scoping workshop would obviously give us a much more clear and specific approach to the revision and what needs to go into it, the content. So process that's just something I was going to mention, that but we're definitely on track, as you say, for 27 to produce that, and we're obviously working quite closely with the UK government department that is very close to circularity in this. So DEFRA is very well aware of this work, and we've got DEFRA is our Department for Environment in the UK, and we've got representatives from that department who are both, they're sort of keeping a watching brief and also inputting where possible, so that we align with the upcoming circular growth strategy that they are working on at the moment for different sectors across the UK.
So over to you, Sarah, on the playbook.
Okay, you can hear me, can you? You could hear me before?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, very clearly.
See, I wasn't sure. Suddenly, I thought maybe you couldn't hear what I was saying before. Okay.
No, all came over loud and clear.
Okay, that's fine. So, did you get the slide? That's it. Yeah. So, with this is our piece of work that actually we sort of kicked off some while ago with some workshop activities in nearly 3 years ago now, actually, with the University of Glasgow and others, to really think about what, given as you're here today listening to all of the things that we're hearing about the upcoming standard landscape and the regulatory landscape for textiles and clothing, but this, so essentially we wanted to be able to support industry as much as possible, particularly those who may not have full teams of sustainability professionals in charge of looking at compliance issues and thinking about what needs to be done. So we wanted to provide an overview of some of the things that you've heard here today, but maybe not in quite so much detail, but much more from a sort of functional perspective. So what if you're in a fashion business or a clothing business, what kinds of things are you going to need to be thinking about? And here are the regulatory landscape, the standards which could impact and standards which could help, and the regulatory landscape that is out there that you need to be aware of, particularly given the changes that have been brought in by the EU as our largest trading bloc. But obviously, we need to also be aware that that people are coming from all over the world, coming to work in the EU and coming to bring their products and services, and also vice versa. So although it's being made from a kind of much more UK European perspective, it's obviously something we hope that will be useful to all sort of SMEs with in clothing and textile industry, and we're hoping to launch that in next month.
So. Great. That was going to be my question, Sarah. And again, is this going to be freely downloadable, or
that was the plan?
Yeah. Okay. So I know that people will be thinking about that question, so I thought I'd be able to ask it. So
excellent.
We'll thank you very much for that, Sarah, and please keep on the line. We've now got some time for Q&A, and perhaps Sash, if you've picked up on any questions or any thoughts from anybody, we can highlight that, and maybe our colleagues can help give some feedback.
Yeah, there's just one question right now, which is how can retailers, etc., keep informed going forwards?
I don't know if Danielle or Sarah or Sarah, is Sarah on the line as well? I think you're muted, Sarah.
Hello, yes, it's Sarah Horsfield. I'm on the line.
Yes.
I'm actually the textiles committee manager at BSI. So it was part of a question for me to ask, really. So it's just to let people know that they can obviously contact Sarah or myself going forwards. But also we have a standards development platform as well, where people can look up a keyword and they can find out which standards are available on any particular subject or any committee they might wish to become involved with on a national level. Just really to highlight that.
Great. Yeah, excellent. In terms of this, any thoughts on support for retailers? I mean, I guess my initial thought will be make sure whichever country you're in connection with your sort of appropriate retail forum, because there will be, I am sure, specific committees that are expert committees that have been set up in the different retail groups that are monitoring a lot of this. But I don't know if I think one of the challenges we see in the UK at the moment is that until the government publishes its circular economy strategy, you've got a lot of associations and others in a wait and see